Welcome to episode 9, you filthy animals. And so this is Christmas. It's Christmas Eve, guys. How exciting. We're in the paint and powder coating room. It's darker than before, mainly because we've started putting plywood on the roof. The roof's made good progress this week. The guys are here right now. They're putting on the vapor barrier, the VCL. It's kind of like a metallic foil with almost like a sticky waterproof material underneath that they heat and then stick onto the plywood. Over here, we just started putting a small course of bricks just down there up to puddle level to kind of stop the water from coming into that area. There will be a full wall coming up here, a walkway into there, but it's nice and dark. Dark in a good way because I know that the roof's being done. We've also put some plastic sheeting over the skylight opening that's in here, just to again stop any further water from coming in. Now, not much has changed in terms of the inventory room. The insulation is still there for the roofers. They haven't started putting up the insulation just yet because they're finishing off all of the waterproofing. But as I mentioned before, we have started digging here and pouring the reinforced concrete beam for all this new block work to sit on. We've got some steel mesh, and this steel mesh reinforces the concrete. We build the shutter and we start to pour the concrete in. So we've got all concrete poured here, then we'll break off this shutter in once it's cured. We haven't poured this part yet, but we're gonna pour that again soon. We've actually gonna pour it at the same time as we do this area here. So we've been digging out a foundation. We go down about 600 or so, all the way down into here, and that's where we'll put the first column and pour the concrete base for it. So you can see just from the edges of the old panel there, where the staircase used to be, we have started knocking that panel out and removing it. Some of the guys haven't been able to make it today, so we're doing some other bits and bobs. Once they all come back next week, we'll continue to take these panels out, put those last 3 columns in, and we'll be good to go in this area. We can only go right up to where the sort of electrical box is because we don't want to damage the wall around that area. And then once everything's laid nicely here and all the brickwork is done on these panels going up to the front, we'll then finish that last bit off because we don't want to disturb where all the electrics are. So another reason why we've had to stop demolishing some of these panels is that we are doing block work upstairs as well. If at the same time we're knocking against these walls, it will cause vibrations for the newly laid blocks upstairs. So we've had to pause doing these parts here so that we can finish the block work upstairs, because that's critical to us finishing off the roof, because the roof is resting on the steel structure. There's block work that goes in between the steel structure, in between the panels, and that keeps it rigid. So we need to get that block work done ASAP. Once that area is done, the areas above here, we can continue to remove these safely. To the mezzanine. We're back in the mezzanine. It's looking a bit mucky still. I did say that it would be cleaner the next time we came in here, but we have still been using this space.
Oh, you nasty.
A few things that we did do though, you can see we've got plywood on the roof again now. We've made really good progress on doing the roof in this specific area. Still a bit dirty. We've put some Monoflex over there to stop any rain from coming in. That area is going to be obviously the bullseye window that I mentioned before, the throne room. So we're going to make sure that that's all prepared soon, because that can actually be done off-site. We've also added some temporary doors to keep the heat in a little bit. It was getting quite chilly in here. So we've added some little temporary doors and a small lock, and we've got this super powerful, mega amazing 2 kilowatt heater. Does it work great? Not really. Was it cheap? Yes, it was. And we've got a microwave, baby.
Yeah.
600 watts, bruv. Another thing that we want to do is we want to just put some additional block work underneath here, neaten it up a little bit. We weren't sure whether to just use plywood and paint over it, but I think we've got all this lovely block work and brickwork, we might as well do the rest of it there as well. We're back in the recreational space again, and there's been a lot of updates here. This has kind of been the main area where we've improved. Just above us here is the access hatch. Because we've got such a large roof and we are going to be having solar panels on there, it's important that we have access onto the roof. So we've got a small little access hatch in there, just a manual opening one. So whenever someone wants to work up there, clean the solar panels after a few years, make sure they're getting as much power as possible, they can just go up through that access hatch, walk along the corridor sort of thing that we've got going on up there, and they can do all the work that they need to do. We've got some safety ladders there as well, so that was really important that we had a nice area for access onto the roof. One thing that I didn't actually cover before was how the drainage is going to work upstairs. When you've got a roof on such a large span, you've got to be quite clever in how you work out how the water's going to drain from there. So if you have a look in this middle sort of corridor of the roof, you see these small pieces of timber that are sloped at an angle. They're called furrings. And what happens is when the rain collects on this part of the roof, it falls down at that sort of gradient, and then it can start to make its way to the drainage points. We're gonna have drainage points at the front and at the rear. The one around the access hatch is a little bit tricky, but we are figuring out a way to sort that out. We've been working with the roofers to do that. Normally it wouldn't cover such a large span at 20 meters, but should be okay. So that's one particular aspect of the build we had to think about, so that all that rain, when it's collected, can be drained out properly without it all collecting on top of the roof and then just creating pools of water everywhere. As I've mentioned before, the top floor gets divided up into sort of grids, and we can tackle those grids at different times. We finished grids 4 to 8, and now we started working on 1 to 4. You can see we've done all the plywood and joisting in this area for grids 1 to 4, and we added those additional steels that were resting on the loading bay. They've all been put in place now. Now, you're probably wondering why the joisting hasn't been done on that area, but that's because the end gable of the building actually rests on block work. So we've got George hard at work right now, laying all of these blocks, preparing for the block work required to support these beams. We build the block work close to the beam, and then we put some pad stones in there, and the beams will rest on those pad stones. Once all of the block work has been done to support these beams, the carpenters will then come to finish off grids 1 to 2. Once 1 to 2's done, the roofers will carry on and finish all of the plywood left in this area. And then that's pretty much finishing all of the prep work for the roof to become totally watertight. That VCL membrane is what stops water from coming in, and then they'll just do the insulation and then the metal work on top. That's one of the most important parts of this building, and we're almost there. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. One decision that was a little bit last minute was to add some wind posts at the front of the building. We didn't actually have wind posts on the design originally. The structural engineers didn't require it, but we just felt that if we're gonna have one large block panel going all the way up here, it's quite a big height, it would just be a bit safer to have some wind posts to help reinforce that front wall. It also helps George when he's doing his bricklaying, because he can tie his bricks to the wind posts, so that as he's preparing the window openings, which he set out yesterday, everything's a bit more secure, a bit more tight together. Tight, yeah! Because we're not going to be putting the windows in straight away. So we just want to make sure that this is as strong as possible before we finalise the front of it and get it all going, get all the windows ordered, and finish the entire front face work. Just following on from the wind posts, a good way to represent how the wind posts work. We've got a wind post here as well. You can just see it in between the block work that's here. We've started this panel and finished it off, but these wind posts just help add to the rigidity of the panels that are put in. So we'll be essentially doing the same thing here, just at the front. And if you notice as well, the toilet's gone. So no one's allowed to pee or poo on site anymore. Disgusting! Only joking, we moved it downstairs. It's in an area downstairs where the eventual toilet will be for our downstairs toilet. So we got rid of that, and temporarily it was just providing support for the beams there, but we obviously had to demolish it so that the guys could crack on. We put a bit of temporary scaffolding here yesterday, just to improve the efficiency of how they lay the blocks instead of them bending over and like lifting the blocks higher than they need to go. Ideally, what we want to do is finish off this block work as soon as possible so we can start to take the scaffolding down. Once we get the scaffolding down, a lot will happen quite quickly. So it's just important that we utilise it as much as possible, finish off the block work, and crack on with the other steps. So that's where we're at now, guys. We're just at the front of the building on the loading bay. We're gonna have a small break over Christmas. Normally, we film every 2 weeks, so we'll be skipping the next 2-week window and resuming 2 weeks after that. So it'll be another 4 weeks before that episode goes live. And by the time you see the site again on January 21st, we should be close to completion for the roof. We have been assured by Mascot Roofing that the roof should be finished by the end of January, and I mean completely finished in terms of the insulation and the standing seam. The guys are going to continue with the block work at the front. We'll start the facing brick on there. So we're getting ever so closer. Bit of a delay, mainly because of the weather, but we're almost there and we're cracking on as usual. So with that being said, guys, we want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will see you guys again in January. Thanks very much for watching as always. If you haven't subscribed, make sure that you subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace. I need to lay off the snow cones. Oh, it's Candy Cane Jane. Baby, I'm working. Mrs. Claus can never know. We were meant to be together, Candy Cane Jane. Remember, I'm working on Christmas. There's still a bit of a rash down there. Have you checked yourself? It's very red. Christmassy red. It's redder than Rudolph's nose. I've got so many stupid presents to deliver. I'd rather deliver myself to you. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you... Have you been good? Or have you been bad?
Yeah. Oh, you're right.